Hello and welcome to today's final deck preview for V-BT01 Unite Team Q4, which will be taking a look at Kagero or Overlord and Waterfall in unison. So, today's deck, in my opinion, is arguably one of the weaker ones from V-BT01, I think, but it's still really good. Like, don't get me wrong. I just feel like Kagero in its own relies a lot on having specific pieces every single turn, whereas other decks can get by with just having one piece and doing a lot of combos from the get-go. So, we're gonna get into the deck immediately, and then I'll go over a few cards that we do or don't play. The clan is a Force clan, so you do need your Force markers, optimally 8. But you're probably going to be riding like 4 to, I think 4 to 5 is also fine, but optimally 8. So, our starter is Lizard Soldier Undo, same skill as always, when you ride on top of him, draw 1. And then we play our 4 Dragonic Overlords from the Trial deck. His skill is an active Vanguard and Rearguard Circle once per turn. Soul Blast 1, and then for this turn he gets plus 10k power. So, this works both on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, so you can push numbers both on Vanguard to have more pressure with his second skill, or have him be a stronger attacker on the Rearguard as well. His second skill is a Vanguard Circle only once per turn. When his attack hits anything, counterblast 1 and discard 2 cards, then you stand him and he loses 1 drive check for this turn. So you attack with him once, you drive check 2, and if it hit, then you pay the cost to counterblast 1 and discard 2 to stand him again and attack with 1 drive check. So it's a good pressure skill because your opponent will usually not let it hit. You can try to attack some rear guards, such as against Oracle Think Tank, you can actually attack Promised Daughter that normally doesn't die to retire effects, and then it will still trigger your retire effect as well, so that's quite nice. So, Dragonic Overlord is a good grade 3. Some people are disappointed with him because it feels like it doesn't have enough pressure. I think it's overall fine, because once you push your opponent to 4 damage, this will have a lot of pressure, and our other grade 3 will have a lot of pressure too. But this is pressure from the very get-go, and I think optimally during your game you want to ride this first to do a bit of pressure from the very get-go and try to push them to 4 damage with this, and then you can either stay on it or ride another Overlord or go into our other grade 3, which is Dragonic Waterfall, which also has the Force marker, and he has the first skill that when you ride him, you can retire one of your opponent's grade 2 or above rear guards. So it is quite restrictive. You'll only be able to retire grade 2s or grade 3s, and, you know, against OTT, as I mentioned, Promised Daughter will not be retired. So it's quite important to be careful when you use this skill. If your opponent keeps their front row open, or if they don't call any grade 2s or 3s, then this will not go off. So be careful when you ride him. His second skill, however, is the reason why he's a VR and why he is fairly expensive. When he attacks, you Soul Blast a grade 3 card. Then when you do, for this battle, he gains plus 10,000 and plus 1 critical, and then your opponent cannot guard with Sentinels from their hand. So they cannot guard with Perfect Guards. They'll have to guard it with just grade 0s, or, well, grade 0s, grade 1s, grade 2s. You basically get the point. But the point is that normally this would be just a 23 with the skill, but because we're playing Force, this clan likes to stack the Force on the Vanguard Circle. Now, not every single game will you want to keep stacking it on the Vanguard Circle. Sometimes maybe you'll put the first one on the Vanguard Circle, and the second one maybe on the rear guard, and the third one on the Vanguard Circle. But if you've pushed your opponent to 4, and you feel like you haven't seen that many triggers checked, you can actually keep stacking on the Vanguard Circle to hit for like 53 with this, and then be able to pressure them really hard into having to guard everything with their entire hand, or just take it and lose because you have the extra criticals. So it's a pretty scary skill, but it's not as scary as people think, because if you misride, if you don't ride into Overlord first and ride into this, it loses all of its pressure, because then you need to basically soul charge a grade 3 somehow, and we don't really run that much, or well, any actually random soul charge, so you're gonna have to re-ride, so he loses all of his pressure basically, which does hurt quite a bit. So I think, again, this really relies on specific pieces, like you want to ride into Overlord first and then you want to ride into this. If you ride into this first, it suddenly hurts a lot, so that's something to keep in mind. Now we're going to go over the grade 2s, first one of which is, in my opinion, a staple in Kagero, which is Berserk Dragon. What is meant by staple, I think I've used this term in the past, is basically a card that is necessary in a clan. So this is a staple. It, in my opinion, must be a 4 of, or at least a 3 of, in most, if not all, Kagero decks. So his first skill is Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When you play it, you counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Then you choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it, but if you place this unit on the Vanguard Circle, you draw 1. What's cool about the wording of this card is that if you ride him, even if your opponent has no rearguards, or if you can't retire anything, you can still pay the cost to draw 1 card, which is actually better than you would think, because that puts you ahead immediately, especially if you're going first, to just have more cards available. And because this clan really needs specific parts in the hand to be able to pull off combos, you want to be drawing through the deck as fast as possible in the early game. So it's like you have your draw at the start, draw from the starter, and then you have your draw from Berserk Dragon. Sometimes it might even be worth to re-ride him and stay on grade 2 for an extra turn just to get that extra draw off, honestly. Because like if your only grade 3 in hand is a Waterfall, I honestly think that it's not worth to ride up to him just to get a retire if you're not certain that you're going to be able to do the second skill anytime soon. So in that case, that's basically the only time when I would say you could ride into Berserk again. So I think this is a really, really good card. His second skill is when he attacks a Vanguard, if you have more rearguards than your opponent, then for this battle he gets plus 3k power. So hits for 13, so you can hit any Vanguard without being boosted, which is definitely very nice. Moving along, we have our other grade 2s. This one is from the trial deck, which is Dragonic Nahalem. When you call him, count almost 1 if you do retire one of your opponent's rearguards in the back row, and for this turn he gains plus 5k power. So very versatile grade 1, obviously restricted to back row only, but it's still going to be able to hit annoying targets. OTT has things like Circle Magus that you want to get rid of. Nova Grappler has things like Riser Custom that you want to get rid of. Kagero itself has some pretty annoying grade 1s. Especially Airmo if they don't pop it off immediately that you want to get rid of as well. So I think overall there's quite a lot of targets that you can hit. For Royals you might want to hit a Morgana that they called or something. So it's definitely quite a good grade 2. And against the plus 5k, so you can hit anything at the same time after being called, and then you just intercept with it and that's it. Next, our last grade 2, I decided to play Spillover Dragon. I think this is actually a really good card. At the end of the battle that it was boosted and attacked the Vanguard, you can count almost 1 and put it into the soul. If you do, you retire one of your opponent's grade 2 or less rearguards. Now, normally you might think this isn't all that great because, you know, it costs a counterblast and all this stuff, but there are 2 reasons why this card is actually really good. 1, it goes to the soul. Overlord likes the Soul Blast. This needs a soul from, well, a grade 3 in the soul, but still. This Soul Blast. And then we still have more cards that Soul Blast, such as Bar that we're going to get into later. So the extra soul is super welcome, and I really like it for that. And on top of that, this is the only battle phase retire that you have in the deck, meaning that every other retire so far is in the main phase. So this is a battle phase retire, meaning you can pump up your own power in the middle of the battle phase, or like you can boost him with an Airmo, and then after the battle you can, you know, use his skill to put him into the soul, and then use Airmo's skill that we're going to go over in a second. So really, really good grade 2, and I highly recommend playing him. I don't think he's a 4 of because he's a little bit restrictive in that he has to attack a Vanguard, has to be boosted and all that stuff, but I think a 3 count is definitely very good. Next, going into our grade 1s, we have 4 Airmo, which is also in my opinion a staple. His first skill is when he boosts during that battle, he gains plus 3k, so he's an 11k booster. And then his second skill is, during your turn, if you retire an opponent's rearguard, you can retire him to draw 1 and countercharge 1. So this is what I mentioned, where you can boost him, you can use him to boost Spillover Dragon, and then when Spillover Dragon retires something and puts itself into the soul, his skill will activate and you can retire him to draw 1 and countercharge 1, so you basically refund the cost for him and get yourself a card in hand. And you didn't need him anymore in the field anyway because you already boosted with him, so that's why the battle phase retire is so good, because every other retire is in the main phase, and like you can call him and then main phase retire and then, you know, use him, but then you're losing a booster that you otherwise would have had. So it's really nice to be able to boost with him and then get rid of him in the middle of the battle phase. So that's why this battle phase retire is really nice. So really good card. It's really important because this is the only countercharge that Kagero has, and we do counterblast quite a lot. Like this counterblast, this counterblast, this counterblast, like a lot of skills like this, everything basically counterblasts. So the countercharge is really, really important, and that's why you want to play 4. Next, we have another trial deck card, which is Bar. His skill is, when you call him, you counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. If you do, you retire a grade 2 or less rearguard in the same column as this unit, and then if you have more rearguards than your opponent, he gets plus 5k. So you basically call him, whether it's in the Vanguard or the rearguard, to in the same column that some pesky rearguard that your opponent has is in, and you're able to retire them and also get a plus 5k, so you can actually hit anything. Even if you call him as an attacker, you can attack for 13k and hit Force Vanguards, which is really, really nice. So Bar is a really good card. I think we play 4 of him for sure, and he's from the trial deck, so he's really easy to get. The last 2 grade 1s that we play are Dragonic Gaius. This is a double rare that has a rearguard skill. when it boosts a grade 3, doesn't have to be your Vanguard, can be a Rearguard too, you counterblast 1 and put him into your soul. And during that battle, the boosted unit gains an extra critical. So you lose the 8k from the boost, however you do give your grade 3 an extra critical. So this doesn't have to be on the Vanguard either. You know, you can boost the Vanguard with him to give him the extra crit, but you can also boost the Rearguard Overlord. So let's say you call him, use a skill to put him up to 23, and then use your Dragonic skill to give him an extra crit, which is definitely going to sting and will force your opponent to guard. So this way you can pressure your opponent quite early, but again, it does cost counterblast, and I think the skill is overall a little bit restrictive. The nice thing is that it does put itself to soul, so you have more ways to soul blast, which is also nice. But I think 2 of this is enough because all the other grade 1s are really good, and so it's worth playing those instead. And then our last grade 1 that I forgot to mention is Lizard Soldier Ropia. It's a very simple but really good skill. During your turn, when your opponent's rearguard is retired, for that turn he gains plus 5k. This is not a once per turn skill, meaning every single time you retire something during your turn, you will be able to get a plus 5k boost on this guy. So he'll be a 13k attacker slash booster, scaling up immensely as your turns go over. So if you get like 1 or 2 retires in your turn, he's going to be an 18k, which is definitely very nice for a booster, you know, arguably an attacker too. So I think he's really good, and like unfortunately you do need to like draw into him because his power only comes through where like you have him and then you use like a bar or a berserk, or like when you ride into him, or when you use Spillover, Nahalam, anything. But again, like it's important to draw into him early. If you're not playing the mirror match, or you know your opponent doesn't normally use Blaster Blade skill, then you can call him quite early and just leave him on the field in the back and just kind of scale up power as it goes. So I think he's a really good grade 1, and so that rounds off our grade 1 lineup. Now looking at the triggers, I am not going for the same lineup as always. Now people often go either 8 crit, 4 draw, or 6 crit, 6 draw. I went through both, and I think that this is honestly the best because, as I mentioned, you really need to see a lot of pieces in this deck. And the reason why I'm playing these draws that aren't perfect guards is because we do discard 2 cards with Overlord. And discarding these 2 is, in my opinion, the best thing you can do, because in that case, you know, you're not really losing much because they're just 5k shields, and you can also use them as boosters if needed. So I think it's not all that bad. So we run 4 crits, 4 heals, 4 of the perfect shield draws, and then 4 normal draws. So I don't think this is like the best trigger lineup ever. I think you can definitely shuffle this around. You can play, as I said, 6 draw, 6 crit, 8 crit, 4 draw, or, you know, 8 draw, 4 crit. I think it's definitely up to your personal testing. This is just what I found from my own testing, and now the draws somehow ended up disappearing. But this is just what I found from my testing, and so I think that it's overall quite solid. I'll quickly go over a few cards that we don't play. One of them is Cruel Dragon. I think he's good, but he's better in the budget variant of Kagero. His good part is that he does a random soul charge, so if you soul charge into grade 3, you can use your Waterfall a bit earlier, and the fact that he has a good combo with Spillover, where you can actually use Spillover's skill to retire something and then call Cruel Dragon in the battle phase. So I'm going to explain that in the budget deck, but basically that's how the interaction works, and it's quite nice, but again, it's quite hard to get off. I don't play Dragon Armor Knight because it's just a 15k attacker and Nahalam already does that. And then I don't play Bellicosity because like he's basically the same as Ropia, but I think the other grade 2s are better, and I would rather play the ones that we currently have, such as Spillover and Nahalam. So I think I'm going to keep it at that, but these are some of the cards that we don't play, and this is what the deck looks like in the end. So now that we've been over all the cards, let's get into a match. Getting into the match, I'm going to be using this deck against, in my opinion, its worst matchup, which is OTT, because it has the very annoying grade 2, which is Promised Daughter, which cannot be retired by effects, meaning that if they only put that on the field, it's going to get really annoying. So I am fighting against a Toku from Yellow Card Vanguard, and he did get the first turn. I ride the Ropia and swing, and just ended at that. I do get a draw, which is really good. Having the PG is really nice here, because once they get on that Imperial Daughter, once they get on that second grade 3 ride, you really need that PG desperately. And all the games I've tested against Oracle Think Tank, the games where I couldn't draw Perfect Guard early were the games that I usually lost. So he does run the Silent Tom in this build, so it's not the same as the one that I advertised in my previous video, but he does call the Promised Daughter that I said is quite annoying. I take the first damage and I no pass the Tom attack. This is a 15k shield, meaning that I am normally on 23, and even with a trigger he would only be able to reach 20. So he does get the Imperial Daughter. Here I use the Berserk and I cannot retire the Promised Daughter, but as I mentioned, I'm still able to draw myself a card, which is really important. I attack his rear because I don't want to give him any counterblast to make his plays, and instead I just get rid of that Promised Daughter and try to force him to call something that will be able to, that I'll actually be able to retire, you know? So he doesn't ride up and he just attacks with the Tom. We saw him check a Imperial Daughter last turn, so that was a 1 to pass, meaning that he was on 9k in terms of, you know, power, and I was on 10k, so it was a 1 to pass to him, and he didn't get any triggers, so I didn't take a damage. So I called the Spillover without being able to use his skill, because even if I lose him, I feel it's not that bad, because I have a Nehalem in hand, and I can use, whether it's attacking through Overlord or with Waterfall, I can still retire units. So I do get the hit and I do get the heal, meaning I go down to 0 damage. We're 0 damage gaming right here, and proceed with the end of the turn. So he rides into Amaterasu, which is the optimal grade 3 that we want to ride into at first, and he leaves the card at the top. So Amaterasu gets the 5k buff from her own skill, and he does once again have the Promised Daughter there. It's already the second one, but he also has the Circle Magus in the back, which I can retire. He gets the Silent Tom and the crit. Here, I thought that he gave the crit to the Vanguard, but he doesn't, so I take it back and I shuffle. As he gave the crit to the rear guard, actually, but then he still attacks my Vanguard. And in this case, I'm thinking, I'm still going to take this because even if I'm given 2 damage, that way I'm ahead in damage, I have more counterblast to make my plays, and on top of that, I'm still able to heal if I do check any. So here, I'm going to ride into another Overlord and stack another force under my Vanguard, because here I was thinking actually if it's worth to put under the Vanguard or if I should stack it under a rearguard, but because my plan right now is to try and push him onto 4 in this turn, and the next turn to ride into the Waterfall that's in my hand, and then be able to essentially force him to drop a lot of grade 0s if he doesn't want to lose. So I do call the Berserk and this time use his skill to retire, and I use the Berserk to attack with 10k on his 9k Promised Daughter. Here I attack with Overlord on the Amaterasu and basically put him in the situation of like, if you want counterblast, you're going to have to let me hit. So he does let me hit, and I am going to be able to use Overlord's effect to counterblast 1 and discard 2. I drop the Nehalem and the Overlord because I feel like they're not that important right now, and then I check myself an Airma, which is a lot more important because I do have the Nehalem in my hand anyway, and then I'm planning to ride Waterfall next turn, so to me, the fact that I had that Overlord didn't really matter. And as you can see, he has a really big hand right now, so even though I push him to 4, it's going to be really hard to overcome this. So he was discarding for the Perfect Guard, and he changed up what he discarded. He goes into the Imperial Daughter, which now does make things a lot more difficult, and as I said before, I'm really glad that I kept that Perfect Guard in my hand, or well, I got that Perfect Guard in my hand earlier on, because right now this is where things start to get a little bit scary. And you know, from my testing games, there were some where he would ride into Imperial, and then he would be able to soul charge a grade 3 and use Deer immediately, and that is honestly just really scary. So he calls the Silent Tom, and he at first uses the skill, but now I believe he's thinking whether that counterblast is worth it, and I believe that he chooses to not use it in the end and then give the power with the or no, he still uses it I believe, but then he also gives it power from the Imperial Daughter. Now he faces me with a crit, I have to Perfect Guard that. Now I'm choosing which target is the best for the drop. I decide to go for the Gaius in the end because I'm not really planning to call a grade 3 to the rear, and I already have a booster behind my Vanguard which I don't want to overcall just to minus myself, so I decide not to do that. He attacks me with a Tom, and I just drop a 20k shield, and that's the end of the story. So I do start my next turn and I ride into the Waterfall, retiring the Silent Tom with the skill of the Waterfall, and I get my 3rd force marker, this time going to the Vanguard circle. So I've got 3 force markers on there, so I'm already going for a base 43k attack. I'm going to get another 10k from the Waterfall skill, meaning I'll be at 53, and Ropey also got a 5k buff from me retiring the Silent Tom, so it's really, really good. Here I make a misplay, a really big misplay of attacking with the Berserk first, because my thought process was like, oh, I can't hit with it because if he gets a defensive trigger, but I forgot that I'm trying to kill him this turn. I'm trying to give him 2 damage with the skill, and so I was really worried that that defensive trigger that he just got would actually ruin everything for me because his hand is so big, and I was honestly worried that this would be it. And so here I'm going through this, like I'm blaming myself for doing this really big misplay of attacking with rearguard first. I should have attacked with Vanguard immediately and not given him that defensive trigger, so I do apologize for that misplay, but he no guards it, and it works out in the end. He gets his 2 damage checks, and sadly he was not able to guard it. He shows his hand, and there it is, just not enough grade zeros. So that's going to be it for this deck preview. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So it is going to be the last one for V-BT01. After this, I plan to do budget decks for every single clan in V-BT01. They're probably going to be at the end of the week once the English scans are out, but the standard content will not end there. There's some other commentary that I plan to be doing. I plan to have a lot of other content related to the reboot and everything for you folks, so do stay tuned. Also, for those of you asking, the game that I keep using to play Vanguard is Tabletop Simulator. It is on Steam, and soon with the Steam summer sales coming up, you can probably get it for cheaper than it normally is. Normally it's 20 bucks, but normally it's really often that it's on sale, so you can probably get it for a lot cheaper than that. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do let me know what you guys think, as well as any of your other feedback towards this deck preview as well. So, that's me for me today. Don't forget to check out the social medias in the description, as well as click the bell button, and join the Discord channel if you haven't already. But on that note, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.